Today, we're jumping into some really fascinating new research that gets to the heart of one of AI's biggest challenges. It's all about teaching an AI not just to know the rules of the world, but how to actually play the game.
So here's a weird thought. Why is it that an AI can write you a perfect poem about, I don't know, a sunset? But the moment you ask it to do something simple, like order a pizza online, it just falls apart? It seems strange, right? Well, it turns out there's a really fundamental gap in how AIs learn to interact with our world.
And that brings us right to what researchers are calling AI's how-to problem. See, the issue isn't that the AI doesn't know what it's supposed to do, it knows the goal is order pizza. The problem is knowing how to do it, especially when things don't go exactly as planned. Let's break that down. AI is absolutely brilliant when it comes to factual knowledge. It knows the rules. It knows, for example, that a login button exists on a web page. But it completely fumbles when it comes to procedural knowledge. That's the knowing how to play part. So when a surprise pop-up ad suddenly blocks that login button, the AI is stumped. It requires a whole different kind of thinking to adapt. You see, the old way of training an AI agent was basically to hand it a giant, detailed rulebook. A human would sit down and write out every single possible step for every single scenario. The AI just had to follow the list. But what happens when that website's design team pushes an update overnight? The whole rulebook is useless, and you're left with a very brittle, very confused AI agent. So if that rigid, top-down manual doesn't work, what's the answer? Well, for that, we have to look at the best learning machine out there, our own brains.
The researchers behind this new method got their inspiration from a psychological concept called state-dependent memory. It's a fancy term for a really simple idea. It's the reason why you might struggle to remember something, but then you walk back into the room where you first thought of it, and boom, it comes back to you. Our ability to do things is tied to the context, to the situation. We don't just follow a checklist. We remember what we did last time we were in a similar spot.
And that leads to this really powerful what if. What if an AI could do the same thing? What if, instead of just reading a rulebook, it could build its own library of personal experiences to draw on? What if it could actually learn by doing? That what if is exactly what led to the development of a brand new method, a system built from the ground up to give AI agents that exact kind of experience-based human-like learning. It's called Praxis. Now, that's a bit of a mouthful, but what it stands for is procedural recall for agents with experiences indexed by state. The key takeaway here is that it's a super lightweight way for an agent to learn on the job, to adapt and get smarter through its own successes and failures long after its initial training is done. So how does it actually work? Well, it's a pretty simple and elegant four-step loop. First, the AI sees what's on the screen. That's the before state. It knows its goal. It takes an action, like a click. And then it sees the result, the after state. It then bundles that entire sequence together, the before, the action, and the after, and saves it as a single memory. It's almost like it's creating its own little gameplay recordings that it can watch later to figure out the right moves. Okay, so the theory sounds great, but the real question is always, does it actually work in the real world? Well, they put Praxis through its paces in a seriously tough environment. They didn't go easy on it. The test was run on a benchmark called Real. And this is not some simple, clean, simulated environment. We're talking 112 different everyday tasks, like booking a flight or managing a calendar, across 11 different real-world websites. This is the kind of messy, unpredictable environment that is designed to make AI agents fail. So, how did it perform? Let's start with accuracy, just straight up completing the mission successfully. Without Praxis, the agents were getting it right about 40% of the time. Not bad, but not great. But when you add Praxis, that success rate jumps up to over 44%. That is a huge improvement, showing the AI is genuinely getting better at its job. But it's not just about getting it right once. It's about getting it right consistently. That's reliability. And here we see another jump. Without Praxis, reliability was hovering around 74.5%. With Praxis, it climbed all the way to 79%. This tells us the AI isn't just getting lucky, it's actually learning the correct way to do things and making fewer dumb mistakes. But what about efficiency? This, for me, is maybe the most impressive part. I want you to just look at this number for a second, 20.2. Now, on its own, it doesn't mean much, but in context, it represents a massive leap forward. Here's what that number means.
On average, a normal AI agent took about 25 steps to get a task done. It was clicking around, trying things, maybe backtracking. With a Praxis memory, it only took about 20 steps. That's a 20% reduction in wasted effort. In the real world, that means faster results, using less computing power, and just a way better experience. That is a massive win. So, when you put all of this together, what does it really mean? Let's zoom out in our final section here and talk about the bigger picture. Because the future this points to is all about one word: adaptation. Look, this isn't really about making an AI that's just a little bit better at clicking buttons. This is a proof of concept for a whole new kind of AI, an AI partner that can actually learn from us, that can adapt to our unique ways of doing things, and remember how we work without needing a 1,000-page instruction manual.
And you don't just have to take my word for it. The researchers themselves say it best right in their paper. They write, "We envision a future where, instead of replacing humans, AI agents work alongside them." This isn't about automation for automation's sake. It's about building better tools to help us collaborate. So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. What if your AI assistant could learn the really complicated, specific parts of your job, not because you spent weeks writing a manual for it, but just by working with you, day in and day out? That's the future that systems like Praxis are starting to make possible. Thanks for digging into this with me.